This short video will show you how ActiveVault is used with Veritas NetBackup. ActiveVault, an exclusive feature of Quantum Scalar libraries, is a secure in-library vault that protects data from ransomware without having to export media from the library. I'll demonstrate how to configure NetBackup with ActiveVault and show how to recover from a ransomware attack. This video assumes you are already familiar with the basics of how the ActiveVault feature works. If you are new to ActiveVault or need a refresher, check out the intro video, detailed tech brief, and other resources at quantum.com/ransomware recovery. Let's look at the environment I have set up. I have a Scalar i6 tape library configured with two partitions. One will be used by NetBackup, and the other is a special system partition that will be used by ActiveVault. The ActiveVault partition is not visible to NetBackup or any other application. Looking at the library UI, we can see the two partitions. The NetBackup partition is shown in purple, and the ActiveVault partition is shown in green. Looking at the NetBackup partition, we can see it has 74 tape slots and 3 tape drives shown here in the middle. The black lines represent tapes. You can see that there are 20 tapes in the NetBackup partition. Also note that there are no tapes in the ActiveVault partition, and no tape drives assigned to it either. Let's go back to the presentation. We talked about the library partitions. Now let's add NetBackup to the picture. NetBackup typically backs up data first to a disk repository, or in NetBackup terminology, a disk storage unit, or DSU. From there, additional copies can be made, for example to a tape library. This can be done in several ways, depending on your disk target. I'm using NetBackup disk staging. My local repository is therefore known in NetBackup as a disk staging storage unit, or DSSU. Note here that NetBackup has access to its own library partition for backups, but it does not have access to the ActiveVault partition. You'll see why this is important shortly. A NetBackup environment also contains clients that host the production or primary copy of data that needs to be protected. When NetBackup performs a backup, that backup image consists of disk image files written to the DSSU. And you can configure a disk staging schedule to also make a copy of that backup image on tape. For the ultimate protection, NetBackup can export that tape for safe storage elsewhere. This is where ActiveVault comes in. With ActiveVault, exported tapes don't actually leave the library. Instead, they are redirected into the ActiveVault partition within the library. But NetBackup doesn't know this. It only knows that the exported tapes reside in a vault somewhere outside its control. The tapes are still in the library for rapid recovery, but because NetBackup doesn't have access to them, neither does an attacker. Let's see how to set this up in NetBackup. This NetBackup environment is very simple. I've got a single server acting as a master server, media server, and client. I've configured 2 storage units, a disk staging storage unit that writes to local disk, named Backup to Disk, and the Scalar i6 tape library. In the DSSU config, we can see that it's writing backups to the local D backup directory. Looking at the staging details, we can see the final destination for the copy is the tape storage unit associated with the i6 library. The frequency is set to once per day. NetBackup is designed to operate based on schedules, but in the interest of time, I'm going to cheat and drive things manually. You may also see me use fast forward a little bit, just so you don't have to watch the boring bits. Under Topology, we can see that the library has 3 drives, 1 robot, and some storage slots, and is connected to this media server. I've also configured a policy named Disk. Backups from this policy are directed to the DSSU we looked at a moment ago, named Backup to Disk. This policy is set to back up this machine, and specifically the directory cdata, which contains the folders I want to protect. Here's how that folder appears in Windows Explorer. When I run this policy, NetBackup will back up directory C data to directory D backup. Here goes. I'll run a full manual backup. We can monitor things using the activity monitor. The initial backup job is now completed. If we look in the D backup directory, we can see the files NetBackup wrote there. Now I can go to the storage unit named Backup to Disk, right-click, and select Manual Relocation to the final destination. This will make the copy to tape. As I said before, in real life this would be driven by a schedule. The tape copy has now started. If we switch to the library, we can see that there's a tape mounted in the drive. Happens to be tape with barcode 779L8. The tape copy has completed. Next step, we need to export the tape. In the media window, I'll just right-click on tape 779L8 and select Eject Volumes from Robot. And then I'll click Eject to confirm. And here I'll click Yes to continue. Okay, we're done. You can tell by the status that says Eject Successful. NetBackup has moved the tape with the completed backup to the import-export slots in the library. Let's see what it looks like from the library user interface. As we can see, there's one less tape in the NetBackup partition, and there's now a tape in the Active Vault partition. Specifically tape 779, as we expect. After NetBackup exported the tape, the library immediately moved it into the Active Vault partition per policy. Now let's go through an example where we have a ransomware attack and see how we can recover. This is the current situation. We have a primary copy of data, a backup copy on a NetBackup DSSU, and a tape copy in the i6 library in the Active Vault partition. Now let's say an attacker got into your network. They've deleted or encrypted or otherwise destroyed your primary copy of data, as well as the backup copy in the NetBackup DSSU. Luckily, you have that safe copy in the Active Vault partition. Notice there is no attack path to the safe copy since it's not connected to the network and it's outside NetBackup's control. There is no way that a remote attacker can gain access to that tape as long as it's in the Active Vault partition. Let's simulate this attack. In Windows Explorer, I'll just delete the data directory that we backed up before. And I'm also going to delete the backup copy on the NetBackup DSSU. Remember, that's on our D drive in the backup directory. I'll just wipe out the entire contents of that directory. With our primary copy and local backup no longer available, our environment looks more like this, with the safe copy of the data in the Active Vault partition. We give the library admin a call and have them move the required tape back into the NetBackup partition. Access to the library UI is protected with two-factor authentication, so this is a very secure operation. From there, we tell NetBackup to restore the data back to its original location, and our recovery is complete. We then re-export the tape so that it's again protected in the Active Vault partition. Let's look at how this is done. We need to tell NetBackup to restore that data from the latest backup. But remember, NetBackup's disk repository is destroyed, so we have to restore from the secondary copy on tape. To do that, we need to make the tape copy the primary copy. Now that I've done that, I'll go to the Backup and Restore console, Restore Files tab, and select just the most recent backup. I'll click Preview, and we should see NetBackup report that it needs a tape to do the restore. There, NetBackup says it will need tape 779L8 to do the restore, which is what we expect. Now I'll just click the Restore button to start the restore and accept the default options. I'll head over to the Activity Monitor to monitor the job progress. NetBackup is reporting that there's an operator action pending. You know why, right? Remember that NetBackup no longer has access to the tape because it's in the Active Vault partition of the tape library. Before the restore can complete, we need to move that tape back into the NetBackup partition using the library admin GUI. Back at the tape library UI, I'll go to the Partitions screen, select the Active Vault partition, and select Export. I'll select to export for re-import into the NetBackup partition and select tape 779. Then click Apply. The library will now move that tape out of the Active Vault partition to the Import-Export slots. We can see tape 779 is indeed in the Import-Export slots here. Back at the NetBackup console, I'll poke NetBackup to inventory the robot. Okay, we see it found the tape, and it says it's going to move it back into slot 1. If we go back to the job status window, we can see that now that tape is back in place, the restore can continue, and the media is being mounted. Now that restore is complete. Going back to Windows Explorer, we can see that our data directory has been recovered. Now the last thing we need to do is re-export that tape back to the safety of the Active Vault partition. Alright, let's review the top takeaways from this demonstration. ActiveVault provides the protection of vaulted tapes without having to remove media from the library. This saves administrator time and effort and eliminates the dangers of manually handling tapes. There's no attack path to tapes stored in the ActiveVault. No applications can see them, and they cannot be exposed to the network in any way. ActiveVault is transparent to NetBackup. NetBackup simply believes exported tapes have been removed from the library. And finally, I showed that ActiveVault enables an admin to recover data from a safe copy with just a few clicks, and they don't even have to leave their chair. For more information on ActiveVault and how you can use it to protect your data from ransomware, visit quantum.com. Thanks for watching.